Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Pulpit. My name is Jamie Dew, president of New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and Level College. Excited to be back with you on this episode. I'm actually have a very, very special guest with me in the studio today. I'm on podcasts with different people sometimes, and then over my career, done lots and lots of different podcasts, both audio and video. I think this is the first time I've ever interviewed my wife.
It is.
So welcome to the podcast, Tara Dew.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. And we've been married 25 years this year, right?
That's right.
And so I've shared my testimony on this podcast before for our listeners. Just very quickly tell us where you grew up so that they know. I know this already. I know all of this. But tell them where you grew up, how you came to faith, very quick, and then call to ministry too. Would you do that for us?
Yes. So I grew up in a Christian home in Florida, and my mom and dad both had gotten saved in college, and so I say that we were there every time the church doors were open, and I have loved Jesus for as long as I can remember. But when I was 5 years old, I got to go to a Billy Graham crusade with my mom and my grandparents, and it was there that I heard the gospel truly for the first time, that Jesus had offered us this great gift, but we had to accept it. And I can remember looking up at my grandmother, who was 55 at the time, and I said, "Grandma, have you ever trusted Jesus?" And she said, "No, but I want to." And I said, "Me too." So we walked down forward together, me at 5 and her at 55, and that really began my own personal walk with God, where it was no longer my mom and dad's faith, but my own. Right. And in middle school, I did an Experiencing God Bible Study, Youth Edition, and learned how to study the Word for myself, and just began to really follow Him and know His Word. And when I was a sophomore in high school, I accepted a call to ministry at a youth camp.
Yes, so we, a little bit about our story here. We dated briefly my senior year in high school. You were a freshman.
That's right.
I was 18 and you were 14 when we met.
Yep.
I think I was 19 and you had just turned 15 when we actually dated. Mm-hmm. We broke up at the end of my senior year. I was the bad guy. I was going to college, and you weren't called to ministry yet, so it just didn't look likely. And then I was sitting next to you the night that you surrendered to ministry. We were at a Crossroads camp was it Garner Webb?
Yep.
And Clayton King, I think, was preaching.
Yep.
And you surrendered to ministry. And
yep.
I can remember going, yeah, maybe her after all.
But I didn't know what that would look like,
right,
Sure.
I
can remember the counselor saying, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I just want to follow Jesus and serve Him however that was." I didn't know if that'd be as a missionary or as my elementary school teacher, which is what I wanted to be, and use my classroom as my mission field. But then you're right. As God started to develop our relationship, It was clear that you were heading into pastoral ministry, and I got to be a pastor's wife, and I loved that.
Yeah, and I'll say this to you. I say these types of things to her from time to time, privately, romantically and stuff, but I'll just commend my wife to you folks, our listeners on the podcast. I think about this often when I think about all that God has allowed us to do over the last 30 years. It has been phenomenal to watch you serve the Lord, love Jesus so aggressively and so consistently our entire marriage and ministry. I couldn't think of anybody better to be beside me and sometimes being a great example to me and spurred me on in ministry. So It's been a great ride, babe, and I appreciate you a lot. All right, that's for our listeners. That's a little bit about my wife. If you don't know her, I certainly would commend her and her speaking to your ladies at your church, but then also her writings. Tell us real quick about some of the books, projects that you got going on and stuff that you're writing and publishing on.
So in 2024, I had the privilege of releasing Overflowing Joy, which is a book that walks through John 15, about how as followers of Christ we're to have this overflowing, contagious joy to those that are around us. And coming out in February 2026 will be Overflowing Peace that walks through Psalm 23. And just talking about a life of following Christ that has just a peace that runs over.
Right.
And I'm really excited to walk through Psalm 23.
Yeah, and you've got a couple other things working for the future. I guess
That's
maybe some of
right.
them we can't say about it. or
That's
anything,
right. But more things coming. That's fine.
That's right. Yeah, I'm super proud and grateful to see you doing those things. All right, our listeners, what we're talking about here today is marriage in
Yes.
ministry. So there's really, for us, it started, we were in college serving the Lord, different colleges, different states, dating long distance and trying to find ways to like go on mission trips together and serve the Lord. Then I think in May of 2000, I graduate college, come back to North Carolina, start at Southeastern Seminary. You were at Meredith College. My first year of seminary, right in the middle between the two semesters in December, we get married. But I was an interim pastor of a church. And so we had a semester of pastoring while not married and then serving together. And then we got married and continued to serve. And we've really been doing that ever since.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen, I mentioned this to our viewers and listeners in one of the previous podcasts, our whole life has been around ministry in some way. So it's not just our life in ministry, but we've kind of gotten to see thousands of examples of these types of things. And so as such, we talk about this kind of thing a lot in churches we go to. So let's talk about how to approach marriage in ministry for those who are called into ministry. We talk about a variety of different things when we're in churches in different contexts and talking specifically to college students that are thinking about marriage. Let's talk first, Tara, about this would be specifically for those who are not yet married but feel a call to ministry. Let's talk first about picking the right spouse. How important is this?
Vitally important. We say often, you get one of these.
That's
you
right.
get to choose one, so make a really good choice. And I can remember one thing that you had said to my dad when you asked if I would marry you, if he would give permission for me to marry you. And you said, I can serve the Lord better with her than without her.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good test for when you're dating somebody.
Right.
Does that person help you to love Jesus and serve him better?
Right.
And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be pursuing that relationship. You
That's
choose
right.
one. And you get one choice. And so make it count, especially if you're called to ministry. Find someone else who is heading in that same stream with you, who's
Right.
heading in that same direction with you. And I like to use the analogy of a canoe when I'm talking to ladies because God is calling you to get in a canoe with somebody.
Right.
And you're not going to want to get into a canoe with somebody who's paddling in the opposite direction.
Or
as
not
you.
at all.
Or not paddling at all. That's right.
That's right.
So think who you're going to paddle with. Who are you
Right.
going to spend your life with? And it needs to be somebody who's heading the same direction with you, who's going to be spurring you on and paddling with you in that same direction. God's calling you to be one flesh, so he's not going to call one part of the one flesh in one direction
Right.
and not the other. So the choice you make is vitally important.
So one of the things our listener or watchers may not realize is that you did a doctorate of education, specifically studying pastors' wives and their preparation levels for ministry. Because in ministry, unfortunately, far too often, when the couple goes, quote unquote, goes to seminary, it's the fella, it's the guy that's getting all the education and all the mentoring and all the sort of cultivation, and the wife really gets virtually nothing.
Right.
And you studied that, and it was exactly what we feared it would be. But talk for a minute about what you found related to the wife and the number of people, the number of spouses that would say, no, I'm not called to do that. My husband is.
Oh, yeah. So there's kind of 4 different groups that women often fall into. There's one group where they feel like it's a shared calling.
Right.
They're doing the same thing. You see this often with missionaries or with church planters where the husband and wife are really a team with this shared calling. You have a compatible calling, which is kind of the second calling where maybe that would be like a pastor and a pastor's wife, where your callings aren't identical, but they are compatible with each other. And then there's a group that's just an impersonal calling where they're kind of indifferent. Yeah, that's my husband's, calling, and I'm just going to show up when I can.
Right.
And then there's the one where it says, I'm not called at all.
Right.
And unfortunately, in my research, that was a larger group than I had expected.
Right.
I surveyed 711 pastors' wives, and I think there was about 7% who said, yeah, I'm not called at all.
Me. Yeah.
And I'm not involved at all. And
What
sadly,
about that third category of just kind of indifferent?
the indifferent, it was between 10 and 15%. I don't remember the exact amount, but that one, at least the husband can survive in ministry. But that last group, it's an impossible. And so really I encourage wives that if your husband is serving the Lord, well, then you as a follower of Christ are called to serve alongside, whether that's a shared calling or at least a compatible calling or a supportive calling. But if you are completely indifferent and checked out from it, unfortunately, the husband will not make it in ministry.
I can't imagine, when I look back on the last 25 years of our marriage and us serving the Lord beside each other, if you had been certainly in that fourth category of that's not me. I would not be here today. I would not be doing what I do. I mean, I'd probably be in, I don't know what I'd be doing for a living, but probably not ministry. And our experience bears that out across the board. What we see constantly over the last 30 years of our life in ministry has been when you have most of the time when folks fall out of ministry, burn out of ministry, there's something marital going on there. And a lot of times it's this, just no, that's not me, that's his thing. But honestly, Tara, I can't imagine that I would be able to have done this as long as I do it and as far as I've gone in terms of, the different kinds of things I've gotten to do or we've got to do. Even if you were in that third category, the indifferent one, there's no way. If you were simply tolerating what I do for a living and my calling, I just don't think this would work because we wouldn't flourish. Right? The only thing that's made it possible for us to flourish in this is that we are two people in a canoe. We're going in the same direction. There are times we might bonk heads with each other, but for the most part, we're going in the same direction, and we've been paddling pretty hard on that for 25 years.
That's right.
So that's
one thing that people might not know about us is that we're two of the most stubborn people, right? Ever. We both have.
Speak for yourself, lady.
Right. But praise the Lord for what he's done in the last 25 years. And it's been the best adventure ever. And that's what I tell ladies all the time, like, man, serving Jesus is the best calling in the world.
I wouldn't take anything for it. I really wouldn't. And I wouldn't, and not just serving him and getting to do that with him, but frankly, getting to do this with you. It's been a blast. It's just been the most joyful, life-giving blast I can ever imagine getting to do. But I think it's to your point that it's the two people in the canoe, right? Yeah. We're paddling. We're not perfect. Good gosh, we're not perfect, but paddling in the same direction. So let me before we transition to the next question here, let me just say this to our listeners. Here's the point that Tara and I often would say from what we're talking about right here. Whether we're speaking to a college group or in a church context on a weekend or something like that for a marriage retreat and a ministry retreat and stuff. For those who are unmarried right now and you feel called to ministry, what Tara said is absolutely key. My goodness gracious, think about your yes to who you're marrying very carefully because this matters. If you are called to ministry and you are about to marry someone who is indifferent and going to tolerate you doing it, that's probably not going to work. If she or he is just like, no, that's not my thing, then I'm just telling you, man, that ain't going to work. So be very careful about that. Compatible, category 2, we see that all the time. And we see couples flourish with that. And then there's certain types of things where two people have the exact same kind of calling, maybe it's counseling ministry, both of them do that, or children's ministry or something, both of them, they certainly flourish when they do that. So that's just critical. Right. And now, for those who are married, hearing us say this, we've just said pick the right spouse. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, oh no, my spouse is not compatible. Hey, look, you said I do, and there's a covenant. So, pray to God, seek the best, work really hard. Remember that good marriages are not fallen into by luck. They're built.
That's right.
And it may take a long time and a lot of the Holy Spirit, but just be faithful. The Lord will honor that.
Well, and the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives inside of us. Right. And so there's nothing that's impossible for him. There's no marriage that's too far gone. And I think this is a matter of prayer, but also of, seeking the Lord together. And based on my research here at New Orleans Seminary, we have an entire program for ministry wives called Thrive, because we don't want them just to survive in ministry. We want them to thrive. But one of the first classes in the program is where we cover this about calling. And I can remember receiving an email from a pastor who said his wife enrolled in the program reluctantly. But after that class, he said, Tara, she went from being someone who barely came to church to someone who is wholeheartedly devoted to the church and is now teaching other pastors' wives in the association about what she learned. And so don't ever feel like your spouse is too far gone.
Right.
Pray, seek the Lord, seek
help,
counsel.
Seek
That's
counsel,
right.
That's right. Find other people that can a community with that.
That's
you know,
right.
even if they're not at your church, but just something like a Thrive program or something like that of just other like-minded folks.
That's right. That's
helpful.
right.
Let's talk about, the canoe metaphor is kind of helpful leading into this next one. We talk a lot about what I'd call alignment. And by this, I just mean going in the same direction. That's not just something we've had to do on the front end, right? Right. There have been some major, I tell people this all the time. When I surrendered to ministry, I thought I'm going to pastor a small little church for most of my life. And that was it. I just kind of thought that's what I do. I never envisioned, all the other things like being a professor and then a dean and a vice president, a president, and all these other things. So all that to say, our ministry has evolved.
Yep.
And that takes some realigning.
Absolutely.
So talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely.
What have we done there?
I think just walking with the Lord, every day looks different. And so it's not just a one-time yes.
Right.
To following him or serving together with your spouse. It really is this daily taking up your cross and following him. And there's seasons and there's times where God might be shifting where your calling is going to focus. And I think it's important as your spouse to pray together, to talk together, to seek the Lord together. And he will lead you to the same thing.
Right.
He's not going to lead one of you to one thing and someone else to the other. So I think there's this constant, as you're seeking the Lord individually, seeking him together, communication, talking, and just constantly aligning your spirit with the Spirit of the Lord.
And there are times that is smooth and joyful, and there's times that's kind of tough and maybe even painful and stressful in your marriage because you don't always at least initially mentally align together. I can think of 2 times where we had to consider New Orleans.
Yep.
One time it was very much both of us, this is what the Lord is calling us to do. It was in 2019 when we were coming here to serve in this particular capacity. The other one was in 2008. Remember this one?
That's right.
We did not align.
Nope.
We did not align. And that was man, I look back on that, Tara, and I think what ended up happening was exactly what needed to happen. So for the listener, in 2008, there was I'm a philosophy professor. That's what I went to school forever to do. In 2008, the economy tanked. There were no jobs in the country anywhere, much less in philosophy. Yeah. And New Orleans Seminary was reaching out to me to hire me to teach philosophy. And it felt to me that if I did not say yes to that job at that time, I was committing career suicide. I would never, ever get the job in higher education that I'd spent my whole life preparing for. And the stress of that and the disappointment of that were overwhelming for me. And yet, so I was very much inclined to say, we got to go to New Orleans. You were very much inclined to say, no, we're not supposed to do that right now. And most of that was personal stuff, right? We had family things going on. It wasn't professional. It wasn't. It was just family things. It wasn't the right time. Right. And that was, and I have no doubt in my mind looking back that what happened was exactly what needed to happen in that we stayed in North Carolina and ultimately the Lord used that to prepare us. But that was tough.
That's right.
That was tough. And we weren't aligned there. And I had to basically come to terms with the fact that of exactly what you just said. If God is calling me there, then he is also calling you. And he is definitely not calling you. And so that means he's not calling me either.
That's right.
And, the Lord honored that.
If you and your spouse aren't on the same page, then you keep praying and you keep waiting and you keep trusting until you are on the same page. And I think that's important. Like, you don't want to rush ahead of God, but you also don't want to rush ahead of your spouse.
That's right.
And so you keep praying and the Spirit will lead in the right direction. And in 2008, it was very clear this is not where we're supposed to go. And then in 2019, it was abundantly clear God's calling our family to move here.
But if you're out there listening, going into marriage, or you're already married in ministry, look, this is just the point here is that you and your spouse have to constantly, I say constant, it's not like you're doing it every single day or every week or month, but there are these regular, I don't want to call them check-in moments.
But it is, yeah.
But they are. They're regular moments to make sure that you're still going in the right direction and that most importantly, that you're together that direction that you're going. All right, we got a couple other things we need to talk about real quick. Rhythms, healthy rhythms, habits, things, family habits, that is, and family rhythms, that is. Talk about that. What's that look like in our home?
Marriage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think specifically talking about with you and your spouse, it's important that you establish healthy habits and rhythms in your relationship because Satan wants to destroy marriages. But he desperately wants to destroy ministry marriages.
Right.
And so if you're in ministry, you've got a major target on your back, and Satan desires to destroy you.
Right.
And so I think it's important to set up regular habits and rhythms in your marriage that will foster a purity, a holiness, an intimacy, a togetherness. And for every couple, that might look different.
Right.
But some things that we have done that I think are really vital is date nights.
Right.
I mean, I that's one thing that I think we're really good at before we get married. But then when you get married, you can sometimes fall into business partners where you just talk about the day or your jobs or whatever, but you forget to date your spouse. And we're called to love each other, but we're also called to like each other.
Right.
And so it's important to do things that are fun together. It's important to laugh together. It's important to spend time with each other. And we put things on the calendar that are important to us. And so if your spouse is important to you, then schedule it. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You can stay at home and watch a movie.
We ate cheeseburgers together last night in the cafeteria.
We did.
Yeah,
So date nights
I
don't
enjoyed my
have to
cheeseburger
be
with you, by the way.
expensive. I did too. They don't have to be expensive, but they have to be intentional. And so I can remember when we were so poor and we had little kids and couldn't afford a babysitter. Well, they got peanut butter and jellies and we put them to bed early, and then you cooked steaks for us and we ate with candles. And so you can make it special, but you've got to be creative and you've got to be intentional to prioritize those times.
Right.
I can remember, though, for our 5th anniversary, we weren't so good at this yet. And we had arranged the babysitter. We had gotten all dressed up and we got in the car and we said, "Where do you want to go?" And you're like, "I don't know. Where do you want to go?" I'm like, "I don't know." We hadn't even put any thought into it. We ended up at Jersey Mike's.
I still like Jersey Mike's.
I know you do, but I did not like that as our 5th anniversary date.
We could have done better.
So that's when we started really taking turns who planned the dates.
Yeah.
And that's really special. So 1 month you plan, you get the babysitter, you plan it, you get the reservation, and the next month I do it. And that made it really fun because you think about somewhere fun to go, something fun to do with your spouse. And so establish healthy rhythms, but one of those being date your spouse.
All right, so let's talk, before we end here, let's talk about intimacy just very quickly. Gosh, we could talk about communication. We can talk everything we've talked about so far in this podcast is riding on sort of this assumed you and your spouse are communicating regularly.
I guess you just got to have me back.
Well, we can do that. I know the guy that's in charge of this. So, but intimacy, let me just say this. I don't mean just sex. I don't just mean that. But you made the comment, about our date nights. We rotate who plans them. It just spurred in my mind that it's very important to you, I have learned. And golly, I wish I'd have really fully grasped this when I was young in our marriage. The nicer part about getting older is I just understand some things better now, It matters to you a ton that I've thought about you.
Yes.
Whether that's in a birthday card, or anniversary card, Valentine's Day. You love cards. Girl, you love cards.
And flowers.
And chocolates. You like, or a date that I have planned or something like that. Or if I go somewhere and buy a T-shirt because I like it, that I bought you one too, or something like that, or if you've heard that if I picked up that you really want this thing, which you're very hard to shop for, but if I picked up on the fact that you want this thing, that if I sneaky go get it, you like that.
Right.
You like being thought of. But that for me, I'm learning is a way that I build that intimacy with you. And intimacy entails all these things. But talk about how and why that's important in marriage. Why is intimacy important?
Well, it goes back to how Satan wants to destroy us. And I think, honestly, in a sexual culture, intimacy is one of the things that Satan uses to destroy couples.
Right.
And we've done a lot of counseling in our life. And one of the first telltale signs is a couple who's not intimate with each other.
Right.
And maybe hasn't been for years. And it's kind of like a thermometer that reads a relationship. And so it's really vitally important. It's created by God.
Right.
It is the most personal way of communicating and being close to somebody else. And so I think it's really a vital part of your relationship. But for women, it's very emotional.
Right.
And so...
Which is why you really like When I've Thought About You.
That's right.
The emotional security or the emotional affection stuff matters to you.
That's right. It's not just physical intimacy. Right. It's a very emotional intimacy that's important. And so I think it's important to talk with your spouse. You know, what is important to you? What makes you feel loved? What makes you feel special to me? What makes you feel important to me? And using those things to make your relationship more intimate, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It all really works together to help a husband and wife truly love one another.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess what I would say to all you folks out there is that, you know, intimacy is going to probably mean something a little different for every person. You know, for most men, men are very visual, very physical. For most women, they tend to be much more emotional. So intimacy is that space where both of those needs for both partners can be met.
That's right.
Intimacy is going to change over time as different health things happen, physical things happen. We've had moments in our marriage, whether it was because of me almost dying or us having two sets of twins, where, you know, sexual intimacy was not really possible for very long periods of time. And we had to find other ways to be close to each other, to express love and care and affection for each other, and to really meet each other's needs. And then I think of other couples that might lose the ability to do that. And so our encouragement, our counsel to everybody is, look, as things change over time, your need to care for your spouse and love your spouse does not. Find ways to stay connected and close to each other and provide the nurture that each of you need.
That's right.
And that really matters in marriage, but it certainly matters in ministry marriage as well.
And you're right. Good marriages aren't fallen into.
Right.
They're not just lucky if you find the right person.
Right.
The grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is green where you water it. And good marriages are built. And so spend the time establishing the healthy rhythms and routines and habits of loving your spouse as Christ loved the church.
That's right.
And paddle toward Christ and his kingdom together.
That's right. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Love you.
I love you too.
You're pretty awesome at this wife thing. High five.
Thanks, baby.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.